Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So let's get everybody mad again, right? We are continuing with our ranking series, and we have made it up to the Tech Champions ranked. So this is going to be Tech Top 15. It's going to get followed by Mystic Top 15. And the standard disclaimer, I try to make these as quick as I can, but effectively we all each see the game in a different way and value different things. I make my lists based on my, personal opinions and experience, as well as current game relevance and trends. I personally generally value the end game value in the competitive game modes most when determining the champion rankings. That means I do look at primarily Alliance War and Battlegrounds, because number one, I do think that those two are the only game modes where losing matters, and the champions that people end up using under those conditions are generally the most valuable ones. Because number one, not only the most skilled players use them at most competitive situations. Number two is the reason that any other content in the game is effectively guaranteed win eventually. You are guaranteed to be able to complete a quest path if you keep playing, if you have enough revives, if you change your champions or you get better. But eventually, as long as you keep playing the game mode and keep trying, you know that you can clear a certain thing in a game. You cannot do that, for instance, with a Battlegrounds match. That is just if either you win or you lose, and you can't do anything to take that loss back. And additionally, I think in the most generic scenarios, the champions that do well in competitive places in the game also do well just about everywhere else in the game. And there you go. There are obviously some exceptions. For instance, there are champions that I generally perceive to be overall mid, like Spiral, but Spiral would rank higher because she just happens to counter some specific problem champions like Serpent and Dark Phoenix, for instance, and she would be higher than, let's say, White Tiger, who I think is overall a better champion for most of the things in the game than Spiral is. But I think Spiral has more metagames impact, and therefore I would rank her higher. But those are the exception, not the generic norm and the rule. That said, Tech class is very freaking hard to rank. It really is. And the reason for it is because Tech class doesn't really have one superstar champion. Tech class doesn't have like one must-have, dominate the game, dominate the game mode type champion. This is the old Tech ranking, and it's changed drastically. And here you go. So I used to rank Red Skull the highest. He has dropped quite a bit for sure. Now we have Zola, Stark, Spider-Man, Shocker, Sentinel, Prowler, Jack, Guardian, Famine, Warlock. And obviously, we do need to get to the updated rankings. I am doing top 15 now. And there are a handful of champions I would have loved to add. Many of these champions I love myself in general. But for instance, that's also a good indicator for me. If I really like a champion, but I haven't taken him to rank 4 yet, probably means that, that champion currently is not doing that well in the game. And one of those champions absolutely is Warlock. Warlock was one of the top 5 Tech champions, I think, for many, many years. And I think there's still a ton of value with him. Unfortunately, primarily for like Alliance War. And the reality is, again, that he happened to answer all of the problems that we needed him to answer for a really long time. But the game's changing, and he doesn't do that as well as many of the newer champions do. And unfortunately, he's kind of falling off. He has fallen off. Just about everywhere outside of like story content stuff because of his power control when opponents regenerating, and also Alliance Wars, because you can play him in a unique slow passive way where you can make sure the opponent basically never throws a special attack. You just parry a bunch and then drop a heavy attack and kind of slow play it and then get into your level 2 loops. He can do some amazing things, but realistically I don't think he's a top 15 Tech at the moment anymore, unfortunately. Another champion that just barely missed it was Arcade. I wanted to fit Arcade in there. I think under certain circumstances, Arcade can be an amazing champion. I enjoy him. He just missed the cutoff. And the final one, and this is going to be where some screaming starts, I guess, I'm leaving Viv Vision out there. I do think that Viv Vision's popularity, number one, is excessively boosted due to effectively the availability that she had, because anybody that played the game actively during her event, largely got the chance to get her, and also the 6 stones to invest in her. But even not looking at that, I think she's great. I just don't think again, she would be like top 15 to top 18. And I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for it. But ultimately, what does ruin her for me is, again, first of all, you need to go all in on her. That makes her harder to kind of recommend. And the second thing is the base stats and the chip damage. And yeah, I don't know. I think she just missed out on the top 15. You can be mad at me in comment section for that. For number 15, I am, however, giving to Ironheart. Ironheart is amazingly insane for everything in the game except for Battlegrounds. In Battlegrounds, she's okay. She's usable. She's not the most popular one, but I did want to mark down her impressive level of capability, just whatever. And again, Battlegrounds is definitely not kind of like a meta dominant champion, but then again, just about none of the champions like past top 10 in these rankings are really. But I do think Ironheart provides a ton. She's not necessarily a champion that I would heavily invest to the max at all times, but she is a champion I still end up using quite a lot, quite frequently on constant basis, be that AQ, be that challenge modes, be that story content. She is ridiculously versatile and capable champion. Again, she's just not the fastest. And again, the thing with Ironheart is she actually does a ton of needed matchups too, but for that, she kind of needs to sacrifice her speed a little bit. And we do have like a subset of champions like that who can be like incredibly versatile if you do alternate play rotations and take it a bit slower. A good example here, again, recently champion that's in the public consciousness is Valkyrie. Like, if you play Valkyrie by exclusively hitting the opponent's block, she bypasses so much of the game mechanics and she has a ridiculously good matchup spread. But for like competitive situations in Battlegrounds, it's just not quite fast enough necessarily. And Ironheart's kind of in a similar form where you do need to, if you do need to kind of like go slow play her and go for level 1 rotation exclusively, it's not, unplayably slow, but it is on the slower side of just about all the fights. Anyways, I used to hate this champion, and then she kind of grew on me, and then I started loving her, and I do. She is like one of my favorite tech champions, but I think this is kind of a fitting ranking for her. For number 4, I'm going to give to Guardian. Guardian, again, is a long time survivor of top 10 tech lists, and he would not have made it this time around. And it's also not even necessarily because he's gotten any worse, but, well, obviously, there are more champions in the game that are actively and currently being, mained, and he can't do. But it's also that he often just kind of doesn't fit with the metas as well. He kind of conflicts a lot with them, and this guy, for a while, he's gonna peak and shine for a bit, and then for like half a year, he's gonna be basically unusable in some of the competitive game modes. It's kind of like a weird thing with Guardian. Like, Kabam at one point gave out everybody a 7-star Guardian for free, and I swear to God, next 4 months, you couldn't just use him just about anywhere in the game. But there's a ton to love about the guy. Obviously, at max sig, a ton of energy resistance, and block proficiency and the bleed resistance, and then he can be quite nukey, especially with the Hulkbuster relic extending the shock duration, and there's quite a bit of versatility in his kit as well. But I do feel like he's getting kind of aged out of the competitive metagame. You still see him here and there. Obviously, there are matchups in Alliance War, matchups in Battlegrounds where he does get used, but it's nowhere near as often as it used to be. Still an awesome champion though. Moving on, Yondu. And Yondu, I am kind of being fairly reserved on his placement. I do think he has potential to make it higher. I have seen some good stuff. I have seen some mid stuff from him. I think for a buff, I think he's quite good. I think it's a competent buff, and I can easily see him again increasing in value and worth and getting to be used more often. And also in my kind of like comparison video from Yondu and Super Scroll, I did say that I do believe that Yondu is the type of champion that you want to have access to, because how frequently he could provide a value, not because he would be the champion that you go to for in every meta or try to force to make it work, but more so through the fact that his level 1 has like a massively long heal block. And we do have a lot of like regen metas where people tend to focus on champion whose regeneration rate you cannot modify, and then the only good way to deal with them generally is through heal block, and Yondu provides that. And then obviously also his ability to inflict ruptures and do a massive damage through the block, and that is going to get increased in invade matters, so that's another situation where he can be quite good. And then I'm sure there's going to be another and another and another. Well, I think he's good in like a general setting. I do think he kind of needs like a specific set of conditions to absolutely shine. At the same time, obviously because of his recent boost in popularity, we do see him more often. I would want to see where he is in like a couple of months to kind of like fully judge him. Because I do think he's a good champion. I think this is a fair placement for him for now, with a lot of room and potential to kind of like climb higher on the list. And he actually, well, had the time and chance to kind of like prove himself a bit more. So for now, I'm putting Yondu up here. It's also kind of weird that, you know, half a year ago I would have never expected Yondu to be on this list, but here we are. Penny. Penny is kind of regaining some life to her. Absolutely she is. Obviously, a couple of things that are helping Penny. Maybe they're going to be against her detriment as well. But her, you know, attackers are kind of a bit out of fashion. For instance, you know, Hulkling used to absolutely bully Penny, and that was like a very, very quick fight. And Hulkling is only just about to come out as 7-star, so we'll see if he settles in the meta. But on the down low, we have a lot of these champions now that have like their safeguard mechanics in them. And Penny is perfectly suited to bypass them. Obviously, she always had a good Nick Fury matchup, but it turns out she's quite capable against like Yelena. It turns out she's quite capable against a handful more defenders that, for instance, limit, you know, your crit rates and limit, you know, the amount of damage that you can do per single hit. And it's just that, again, I feel like she is making somewhat of a comeback because she just kind of has the attributes to make her work more often. Obviously, the passive heal block at max sig can have quite high uptime, and that has quite a bit of value as well. And yeah, there's still that inherent defensive value where if opponent does not have a counter to her, she can be like reasonably good stall option now. Obviously, by now we do know how to fight her much better than we used to. And there are more capable champions who can do it, but still, without a good option, she will take a lot of time or can inflict some damage, and these fights can kind of like spiral quite quickly. So yeah, I think Penny at the moment I am putting in spot number 12. I know some of you will probably be upset about that, but I do genuinely think she has made a comeback for a while. We'll see if she remains as relevant as she has been for the past 6 months. Spot number 11, and I hate this guy. Like, I really do. Like, I wanted to love him. I love the character. I just hate his in-game abilities. I don't like using him. I think I look at him as Hulk Ragnarok. He's got like one thing that he does very well, I like two things, and as soon as something better is going to come along, we're all going to forget about him and move on. But as the fact remains, right now, he's a relevant champion. Right now, people do run him, rank him, main him. You see him in the decks, you see him getting used, and it's almost exclusively because of Captain Britain. It's kind of like initially when Serpent got released, we would put anybody in the deck as long as they can somewhat kill Serpent. And the Maker is basically the same. I do feel like his popularity is tied exclusively to Captain Britain, and then, like, yeah, of course, he can do some other matchups, like, you know, the Onslaughts and Jean Greys and so on, but he's still relatively slow for most of those, and there are just better options for everybody, maybe except for Captain Britain. And, yeah, I again, not hiding anything, I think he deserves this spot right now. I do think he will lose it in a year maximum, if not half a year. I do think we are just waiting for something that does what he does, but better. He's kind of like one of the first versions of champions that Kabam often released to test abilities and things out, and then just make a good champion out of it. Like before Baron Zemo, we had Kraven. For Professor X, we had Ebony Maw, you know, before his 3 tune-ups. And you know, he's the first Neuroshock immune champion, obviously, there. And he does have some somewhat unique abilities, but in general, I feel like he's undertuned. That's all there is to it. If he wasn't undertuned, I don't know if he would be the type of champion I love. At the very least, I would, you know, look at him a bit differently, but I overall think he is kind of like handcuffed before the release. Other than that, obviously there are things he can do that are, you know, somewhat half decent set of matchups that he can do, but I don't particularly expect him to stay in the meta game for longer than a year, personally. But he's here now, so there you go. Spot number 10. If this champion kind of pisses me off, because again, when he got announced, I think the character is very cool. I think what they did with the character is very shit and goofy and underpowered. But then the next champion, I feel very, very sad to place here. And I really wanted to place him higher. Spot number 10, I'm giving to Red Skull. And previously he was at top of the tech class, and I genuinely meant that. Because he was the most used, the most popular, the most present tech champion. He was like viable on defense, and he was definitely, you know, more present in the game. Right now, I think Red Skull is also disappearing. I think there are several reasons. Number one is that his defensive threat is significantly lesser than it used to be. And that's to do with, you know, a handful of cosmic attackers, and especially a few of them being complete menaces against Red Skull. And it almost feels like just about any new cosmic champion that got buffed or released got designed to destroy this guy specifically. So that's one thing. And then obviously there are other champions that do quite well against him. And then there's also the flip side of it, because like why Red Skull was so popular was because he was a legitimate defensive threat, and he was also offensively capable. And his best matchup was Domino. I think Domino has taken a massive step back in terms of her usage and value. You see her less and less. That's one thing. Sorry about that, I'm still a bit ill. So one thing is, like, Domino is one of her best matchups. You see that less. Obviously, what's kind of replacing Domino? Captain Britain. And 1 second. So obviously Domino is getting replaced by Captain Britain, and again, Red Skull is kind of like one of the worst options for Captain Britain because he shocks the opponent and he doesn't have like inherently too many ways to work around her. And then obviously we still have Onslaught, who is famously also not the best matchup for Red Skull, and that leaves us with significantly like less viable great matchups for Red Skull. There are some random things that are very cool that Red Skull can do. For instance, I do enjoy him for a random Zola matchup and stuff like that, but I do think he has lost his ground because some of his best matchups have become less relevant and less of a threat, and then his defensive value is also climbing down because again Kabam seems to be just, you know, releasing everybody and everyone that can destroy Red Skull, and he gets showcased in just about every kind of like cosmic showcase video recently. And there you go. I unfortunately think Red Skull is sliding down, or has slidden already down to like bottom of top 10. You could kind of make an argument maybe for spots number slightly. I wanted to place him high. I just can't. So that's where he's gonna live for now. I hope he makes a comeback though. I really do enjoy the champion. I think he's cool. I think he was an amazing buff, and I do think he had a good time in the sunshine. Spot number 9. And this feels filthy because I'm giving it to Bastion. And you know, Bastion again, first and foremost, he's one of the better Alliance War attacking options for sure. He's amazing for Alliance War, always has been, never have denied it. He's also kind of increasing his presence in the battlegrounds, and that has to do with how, you know, popular and good mutants have gotten, and he just kind of happens to be quite good against that. He has some good matchups that go, you know, outside of the class field as well, primarily due to his pursuit and ability to shut down a wave. So he's, you know, viable against Bullseye, for instance. It's also viable against Zola, and there are things he can do. He's not going to be the fastest stacker just about ever. He really isn't, under generic conditions, I must add. And he's not the greatest defender either. But again, when it comes specifically to battlegrounds, I do think we're not going to see too much of Bastion for that much longer. I think within the year, he's going to be a lot less present than he's right now. He's kind of like capitalizing on the circumstance. I do think he's a good champion again for just about everything else in the game, in similar fashion to Ironheart. And right now, I think this is where he fits. I know there's going to be like 3 groups of people now. One is going to be pissed off and going to tell me that Bastion is the best tech champion in the game, in which case you can sit on this and suck on that. And then there's going to be other group who's going to say that Bastion's overrated. And I don't think that this would qualify as overrating him, because he's there, he's present, he's doing things. I personally think this is a solid placement for him, about as high as I could place him. Right, let's move on to the next spot, is Shocker. And Shocker is just great dual purpose champion. He has his defensive tricks and he can trip up a ton of people, and especially in some metas, when the fight kind of like... fight against Shocker, it initially start out well, and then one thing goes wrong and you lose half your health. So he does have a solid amount of defensive value as well, and obviously offensively, he's quite good. His like biggest weakness used to be Domino, and that's not really that much of an issue anymore. And now it's Captain Britain, and obviously, yes, he's not a good Captain Britain counter. However, at the same time, he's kind of finding himself in other class matchups that he is one of the more effective options against. Some of that would also include like Nico Minoru, for instance. He's actually very, very effective and good nuke against Nico. He does that matchup very, very well. And then again, going outside of the class wheel, his big heavy attack and bypass Thanos' protections, and he can do that fight quite well, which is like, quite surprising and unexpected. And he is again managing to stay relevant. So I do think Shocker at spot number 8 is kind of like fair right now. For a while, like I did rank up my Shocker, and for a while I thought he's kind of falling off, but I must admit that recently he's, in my opinion, definitely making a comeback as well. So that is Shocker. Moving on to next, and I'm giving that to Sentinel. Sentinel, again, to me right now is kind of like a definition of a quintessentially good tech champion. He's kind of what Red Skull was, in a sense, where he's a very, very good defender, especially if opponent doesn't have like a great counter, because he can get incredibly tanky. But similar to Red Skull, where it's very hard to crit against him and do a ton of damage, he also has like immunities that do help him out. And then obviously he has his like level 3 danger radius towards the end of the fight that can trick you, and has, I believe, gotten all of us at some point. It feels so bad to eat that level 3 from Sentinel and restart the fight. And then again, offensively, he does have his matchups. He's actually surprisingly decent Captain Britain counter, where you utilize your level 3 to regain all of the health that you have lost. Yes, it's not the fastest, but it works quite well. And it's kind of similar to Nick Fury trick, I suppose, at this point. And then obviously he kind of like covers attack matchups reasonably well also, and has access to massively long heal block, which is useful, has access to shock and incinerate, which is nothing to kind of like feel bad about either. He was absolutely amazing for, again, like invade metas, for the region metas, has access to like a ton of debuffs and very long armor breaks. So he has offensive uses, and he's also like a capable defender. So I do feel the placement's kind of fair for Sentinel here. For number 6, I'm going to go to Prowler right now. Prowler, again, I think for a while was kind of sliding off. Now he's making a comeback, and he is very versatile by his playstyle. He has some solid immunities. Again, one of the techs that doesn't crit, which is quite helpful. He has a very good Captain Britain matchup, where you can do that fight exceptionally well, because again, you're not critting, and you can push Captain Britain to like 2 and some bars of power, where you basically make her use less special attacks, which is a very big part of Captain Britain as a problem defender. And he can bypass the safeguard. And then again, Prowler has always been a champion that goes reasonably well outside of the class wheel, due to his like mediums making non-contacts, and also shutting down the evade. With that, once again, where he is meeting attacks are non-contact, blasts cannot be evaded. With that, he's useful and usable against Bullseye, especially after you throw your level 1 and shut down the evade. So he's again solid against, for instance, Spider-Woman. And yeah, I do think he is a tech defender that has regained a lot of his popularity. And again, with mutant class kind of like becoming a bigger threat than it used to be, it also has enabled Prowler to make more of a comeback and step into more active role. I don't know about you guys, but facing a rank 4 SIG 200 Prowler is quite scary. At that level, he's capable of nuking fights down very, very quickly as well with his Furies and the Raptures, and he has got very good synergy with the relics as well, in order to keep pausing his Incinerate. I believe that is the Sentinel relic. And yeah, I do think the fair position. When it comes to tech class, I must say that again, most of the tech champions, there's a good argument to swap the positions. I think just about everybody from spot number 10 to 3, 4, you can make good arguments kind of interchanging, because again, I think this is like the most compacted class of them all. Next up, I'm gonna put Solvark right now. I think Solvark's number 5. I hate the champion though. He lags my phone. I don't like his design. I don't like his playstyle. I hate fighting him. But I think he's a top 5 tech right now, which bothers me, to be honest. Because again, he is obviously a capable defender. Even though Kabam says that he's only a 3.0 on defense, he isn't. You need like very specific counters to be able to get rid of him. He's situationally extremely good defender because of the way he ramps up and utilize his special attacks, and those can be finicky, and his increased combat power rate can turn the fight into, borderline endless baitings of special attacks. You need to be careful who you bring in against him, and if you can't get rid of armor passives, you will do a lot less damage. And basically, it has he has a lot of things in his kit that make most of the champions in the game kind of bad against him. Where you're going to either take some damage back, or you're just going to be very, very slow, or the fights are not going to go the best due to his immunities, and it is frustrating because unless you have like a great counter for him, it's going to suck. Then obviously offensively, again, I really don't like play this guy offensively too much, but against mutants he's good. Against mutants he's like viable, and the fact that they kind of made him to be good against mutants that put those small neuroshocks on you, or just in general do damage to you. Him being good against Onslaught, Jean Grey, him being good against Captain Britain, he kind of covers the most important bases there. Obviously he's primarily a defender, but he can be competent and capable attacker as well, especially against mutants or under specific circumstances. So, oh yeah, and he mitigates any energy damage he takes, so that's quite useful. There we go. I might not be his biggest fan, but he's quite strong right now, and he's in the van. And I hate the fact that I have to rank him higher than like Red Skull and whatnot, but I do, because you have to. Alright, moving on. So who's above him? Number 1, I'm still putting Zola slightly above him. Zola is kind of a similar MO to Solvark, I'd say. I'd say generically he's like a bit better defender with more specific, counter list requirement. And then offensively, he's also kind of underrated. He's not as good specifically against mutants, but when you do get comfortable using Zola on offense, he's definitely capable and has some quite nice matchups going on for him as well. Be those, Mr. Sinisters, or be those Jean Greys and whatnot. And so he's obviously primarily a defender. He's still a menace. He's still a problem. Like many of the champions that, initially seemed like unsurmountable walls, he was at his peak of power by the time he got released. Now he is, significantly less dangerous, because in between Colin, between Cassandra and Thanos, they ran him in quite well. But if you get caught without a half decent Zola counter, you're just probably losing that round, because Zola is also that guy, that menace, and even though he, just like any other champion in the game, does have counters, he's one of those kind of like rare defender classes where without a good counter, you're going to take damage, you're going to get hit, and it's going to be an awful fight. That's not to mention the fact that there's a significant portion of the champions that can't even take him down in time. And again, on attack offensively, I do think he's kind of underestimated, and a lot of people are not bothering how to learn him how to use on attack properly. The one thing that I did want to see is because offensively he's like burst damage. I'm kind of thinking of singing him up, honestly, because I keep using him more and more in attack, and before that I thought there's no point in giving him big levels because it's mainly for attack and that, burst damage. But might be worth it to make him faster. Might be worth. Right. Spot number 3. I think Fam has earned his place back. When he initially got released, I was kind of skeptical because of his matchup list. But again, he is a troublesome defender, especially when kind of like combined with some specific nodes and, our loving, wonderful AI and Fam's, great ability to throw those light attacks from a mile away and somehow connect with you. He is a pest and a plague to fight. He really is. Without a good counter, obviously. And again, luckily for him, many of his good counters are kind of out of fashion now. Like Pierce Effect is not. Pierce Effect was like mainly present in like Hulkling and a few others, but it's kind of gone away a little bit for now. But hey, Imperios and Hulkling, so maybe he's gonna get his very, very soon. But definitely, I think Fam has been present, constant danger in the game, and used by players at the highest levels. He does have a moderately decent offensive attack matchup list as well. Obviously, he does well against majority of the mutants, maybe not everybody, and maybe not necessarily the best. For instance, he's quite good against a whole bunch of them. They did kind of like a few bug fixes on Fam. Like he used to be able to do Yelena, which he can't really do anymore, I believe. And so that kind of did hurt him a little bit. But I do think that right now I'd put Fam as number 3. Spot number two I know is going to be very controversial. I think it's Jack. And again, I don't think there's a massive difference in between spot number 2 and spot number 8. I really don't. But I think Jack is currently the biggest riser in the tech class. I think if half a year ago we looked at Jack as, it's, a cool champion, yeah, he's a decent rank up choice, then right now, whenever somebody asks me, like, for tech class, should I rank up this champion and Jack, I almost always answer Jack. Because he does do the fights that need to be done. What Jack's rise to the popularity right now reminds me of is kind of Warlock. And we all know how good Warlock was for how long. And it wasn't because Warlock had like amazingly insane damage output or crazy list of amazing abilities. No, it was quite simple because Warlock was like the perfect tech champion put in a lab in many aspects. He just happened to have that. He had the armor buff, which was important for like Havoc matchup and a handful of nodes. That was a big tick in a box. Then he had the Cold Snap, the Bleed, the Poison immunity, and that was like a very, very good set of immunities that helped him in a ton of matchups for hazard shifts and whatnot. Then he did have access to bleed, so he could do the bleed nodes or, inflict bleed when that was needed for specific matchups. The bleed was kind of potent enough to work as like a decent source of damage. Then, if need be for specific nodes, he had access to shock as well. That was tremendously helpful, not to mention the fact that he was a tech champion with an armor break. Quite nice and quite good, and again, quite useful at times. And then there's the infection, which was like effectively one of the best forms of power control and healing control in the game, and kind of supercharged Warlock effectively. And Jack is similar right now. He's not insane. He doesn't have like some crazy rotations or crazy damage, with an asterisk there. But what does he do? Number one, while suffering from energy damage passives, Jacobkanda regenerates. So that's nice. He recovers cheap damage. That's quite nice. Then on top of it all, he is immune to reverse controls. He can parry non-contact attacks. Then he also has the Incinerate immunity, which is also obviously quite nice. He could do better in the immunity department, let's be honest. Can't land the crit, but inflicts instant incinerates instead. Jacobkanda's personal damaging effect scale is critical damage rating, which again is quite crucial. Against mutants, you do inflict plasma, which again is something a lot of tech champions are missing. And then when you kind of move on, he has access to cowardice, which again shuts down plenty of things and is quite useful to have. And largely, and then he has that big level 2 that does a lot of damage. So, and that's kind of the kit what you want from a tech champion right now, because Kabam loves the reverse controls, whether on nodes, like later on in this season, or on champions, like Jean Grey, for instance, or Cassandra or whatnot. Yeah, has that. Firing non-contact attacks. Again, we know that that is a very useful utility right now. You can do that. And then non-critting, and doing a lot of like burst and dot damage. That's very good for Captain Britain. And then again, just the fact that you can recover some damage from him comes on top of it. So I think right now, Jack is kind of like the more quintessential tech champion that counters the mutant class the best. Again, I do believe sincerely it can change, but currently in the game, I think Jack does what you need from the tech champion the best, kind of. And that's why he's here. But no, well, I mean, like, why is he not in the top then? Before I tell you that, another thing that's super cool and interesting with Jack is that he responds to any attack modifiers incredibly well. And that is so awesome to see, because that means any boost will be super effective on him. Any nodes that give him a fury buff or attack increase will be crazy on him. Power shield matters, so on and so forth. He can go into absolute ultra instinct nuke mode under specific conditions too, and I love that, because he's, okay, decently good damage output as is, but then he becomes crazy. Here you go. Starkhand Spider-Man. I don't like Starkey. I never have. I always think of a cheap Chinese knockoff wind-up toy, because the whole poise gaining and stuff like that, it reminds me of the principle of winding up a toy, and the fact that he's so squishy makes me think of like a cheap knockoff type version. But besides that point, I think he's aged the best, and I think he has the most impressive matchup list, and I think he works most amount of time. For instance, but he can't gain any power, for instance. It doesn't matter. He's going to do the damage with basic hits. Basic hits do not do any damage. It's only special attacks. Well, level 2 is going to melt everybody. Right? The stun loop that he can do in between has level 1 stun, relic, and then you can even bring it all back with a heavy attack power control. Crazy amazing. And he is not only, in my estimation, champion with one of the most impressive matchup lists that he can do. He also does many of them the best or close to the best. Like, he's a very good bullseye counter. And then, obviously Lumatrix, he can absolutely nuke that matchup. He's okay against Nick Fury, but then we have like Enchantress, Kindred, Nico, Rintra, Destroy. He can do all of those fights well. Onslaught, Jean, he can do that amazing. Domino, he never did, but again, Domino is kind of losing ground. Gentle, again, a champ, for instance, let's stop on Jean. He's not meant to be good against Jean Grey, but he is, because like every time you crit against her, you get exhaustion, which kind of reduces your damage output. You can just parry heavy, and the debuffs on you are going to kind of recover the chip damage that you take, and the heavy attacks kind of slow things down hit count wise, enough for those exhaustions not to be so debilitating, so he's going to take her down quite well. Similar against Gentle. Gentle is like designed for Starkey not to be good against him. Just parry heavy him, and then Gentle becomes a mute issue. Like, you can do Gentle very fast as Starkey. And obviously good against Dust. Not the best against Mr. Sinister, Captain Britain, as we all know, but amazing against Photon. He just is. He nukes her fast enough. Very easy fight. One of the best Photon counters. Very good against Spider-Woman. Very good against MODOK. One of the best high evolutionary counters. Right, not doing that well in the Cosmic class, I'd say, but it turns out he is one of the best Thanos counters. He does that fight very, very well. Again, he would do okay against Medusa. There would be some chip damage, but he'd do just fine. And then again, one of the best Zola counters. Similar to Okoye, he kind of annihilates his own class too. One of the best Zola counters, one of the best Sentinel counters, one of, you know, a very good Red Skull counter. Shocker, sure, fine. Penny Parker, okay. And yeah, he's ridiculously versatile on attack. And has aged well and works under the majority of the circumstances. And I think currently, and this is kind of the thing, I keep saying, like, I think Tech is missing a superstar champion. What I mean more specifically is that I think Stark has kept proving himself the best out of everybody, and Tech has yet to receive their, like, new Nico or new Spider-Woman or, you know, Thanos or Onslaught. I'm sure it's going to happen at some point, and at some point they will dethrone Stark and Spider-Man, but he's the guy that has been there meanwhile and has been, you know, aging well and has been doing the fights and has been putting in the work. And yeah, it's impossible to deny. Stark and Spider-Man, for years, basically since Battlegrounds came out, immediately regained his popularity and has just refused to go away. If we kind of like take a look at this game from the point when the Battlegrounds started, and look at that bit, I think he's like the guy that has just about aged the best, because most other champions, like, you know, America Chavez used to be great and dominant and now isn't so much anymore. The Human Torch used to be like one of the craziest Battlegrounds champions, and he's still good, but not that. And we had like all of these champions that kind of went away for periods of time, or, you know, completely, or at the very least retreated a little bit. I don't think Starhand Spider-Man has retreated 1 centimeter from being one of the best Battlegrounds attackers in the game, period, if not the best. As much as it pains me to say, even Juggernaut, you know, there are less methods that he works in and there's less defenders that he can take. But not with Starhand Spider-Man, because just about every other time a new crazy defender gets released, somehow Starhand Spider-Man is amazingly good for that fight. Again, we just went over the matchup spreadsheet, and the fact that, you know, High Evolution is a brand new quote-unquote fight defender, crazy good for that. Jean is a 2025 champion, and he's perfectly capable of that fight. Gentle is also 2024, but, you know, also very, very good for that. Deathless Thanos, again, 2024, but very, very good for that. We have the Zola, the Sentinel, very good for all of that stuff. So, again, more often than not, when a new crazy defender comes out, Stark Spider-Man still runs over them. And yeah, I think that's why currently Stark Spider-Man is the best tag champion in the game. 100% because of the Battlegrounds. To be clear, without anybody kind of like raging at me. And therefore, this is your new ranking video. Now you can swear at me, you can be mad at me, you can be angry, that's fine, because I am ill and I'm going to bed. Next Mystic video. Stay tuned for that. Yeah. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about